My name is Jade Carter. I am 24 years old, and I live in a rundown apartment on the south side of the city. I never expected a single question to destroy my family, but that is exactly what happened on Christmas Eve. The dining room was warm and smelled like roasted turkey and pine. My parents were laughing, pouring wine, and acting like the perfect, loving family they always pretended to be. I sat quietly at the end of the table, just trying to get through the night without being criticized. Then my grandmother, Margaret, put down her fork. The room went quiet. She looked straight at me across the table with her sharp, blue eyes. "Jade," she said, her voice clear and steady. "Are you still living in the house I bought you?" I froze. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the clock ticking on the wall. "What house?" I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest. I saw my mother drop her napkin. My father's face turned pale white. Their smiles vanished instantly. Pure panic replaced them. I didn't have a house. I lived in a crumbling apartment with a leaking ceiling and drafty windows. But Grandma didn't know that. She thought she had changed my life. In that silence, looking at my parents' terrified faces, I realized the terrifying truth. They had been lying to her for years. And tonight, everything was about to shatter. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Jade Carter. I am 24 years old. Before that night at dinner, if you asked me about my life, I would have told you I was just unlucky. I would have told you that some people are born to struggle and others are born to succeed, and I was just on the wrong side of the coin. I didn't know I was a victim. I just thought I was a failure. After Grandma asked that question, "Are you still living in the house I bought you?" time seemed to stop. I looked at my mother. Her face was frozen in a fake smile, but her eyes were screaming at me to shut up. I looked at my father. He was gripping his wine glass so hard his knuckles were white. "Jade," my mother said quickly, her voice high and nervous. "Mother, don't worry about Jade. She decided to rent it out. Remember, she wanted to be independent. She's living in a cute little apartment downtown." "Is that true?" Grandma asked, looking only at me. I couldn't speak. My throat felt dry. The word house was bouncing around in my head. To understand why I froze, you have to understand where I actually lived. I didn't live in a house. I didn't live in a cute little apartment. I lived in a building that should have been condemned 10 years ago. It was on the south side of the city, in a neighborhood where the streetlights didn't work and the police sirens never stopped. My apartment was Unit 4 Billion. It was a single room with a kitchenette. The floorboards were rotted near the window. Whenever it rained, water would drip from the ceiling directly onto my mattress. I had to sleep with a plastic tarp over my blankets. In the winter, the heating broke constantly. I would sleep in my coat, wearing 3 pairs of socks, shivering until morning. I was 24 years old, and I felt like I was 80. I was always tired. I worked 2 jobs to pay for that awful room. By day, I was a receptionist at a dental clinic. The pay was minimum wage. By night, I stocked shelves at a grocery store until 2 a.m. My hands were always dry and cracked from opening cardboard boxes. My feet were always swollen. I ate instant noodles for dinner almost every night because fresh vegetables were too expensive. I thought this was normal. I thought this was what you had to do to survive. But the worst part wasn't the poverty. The worst part was how my parents treated me during it. I remembered a phone call from 6 months ago. My car had broken down, a rusted sedan from 2005. The transmission died. I needed $800 to fix it so I could get to work. I had $40 in my bank account. I had swallowed my pride and called my father. "Dad," I had said, crying in the mechanic's parking lot. "Please, I just need a loan. I'll pay you back. I can't get to work without the car." His voice had been cold. "Jade, we've talked about this. You need to learn responsibility. If we keep bailing you out, you'll never learn how to manage money. You need to budget better." "I am budgeting," I pleaded. "I work 16 hours a day." "Then work harder," he said. "Your mother and I are struggling too, you know. We have expenses. We can't just hand out cash because you're lazy." Lazy. He called me lazy while he was sitting in their 5-bedroom home with a heated pool. I ended up selling the car to a scrapyard for $200 and taking the bus. The bus added 2 hours to my commute. I slept 4 hours a night. I lost weight because I skipped lunch to save bus fare. Every time I saw my parents, they made me feel small. They criticized my clothes. "You look ragged, Jade," my mother would say, picking lint off my cheap sweater. "Why don't you buy something nice? You represent this family. You look like a beggar." I can't afford it, I would say. Excuses, she would sigh. You just don't have any drive. Look at your cousins, they are doing so well. I believed them, that's the sad part. I truly believed I was the problem. I thought I was just bad at life. I thought my parents were tough on me because they wanted me to be better. But sitting at that Christmas table, staring at Grandma Margaret, a piece of the puzzle finally clicked into place. Grandma Margaret was a billionaire. She had built a tech empire in the 90s. She traveled the world and rarely visited, but she sent cards. She sent love, and apparently she sent houses. Grandma, I whispered. My voice was shaky. My father kicked me under the table. It was a sharp, hard kick to my shin. She's fine, Mother, Dad said loudly. Jade is just overwhelmed. She's been working hard. A little too hard, maybe. She gets confused. I'm not confused, I said. I looked at my father. For the first time in my life, I didn't see a strict parent. I saw a liar. I looked back at Grandma. She was waiting. She hadn't touched her wine. Her eyes were locked on mine, searching for the truth. I don't have a house, I said. The words came out quiet, but in the silence of the room, they sounded like gunshots. I live in an apartment on 4th Street, I continued, my voice gaining a tiny bit of strength. The rent is $600 a month. The heater doesn't work. I take the bus because I had to sell my car. Jade, my mother hissed, stop making up stories for attention. You're ruining Christmas. I'm not lying, I said, tears stinging my eyes. You told me you were broke. You told me you couldn't help me when my car died. You told me I was lazy. I looked at Grandma. I never got a house, Grandma. I didn't know there was a house. The silence that followed was heavy. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My parents looked terrified. They looked like cornered animals. Grandma Margaret didn't scream. She didn't yell. She did something much scarier. She slowly placed her napkin on the table. She stood up. She was 80 years old, small and frail, but in that moment she looked like a giant. Margaret, my father stammered. Let me explain, it's complicated. The taxes, quiet, Grandma said. It wasn't a shout. It was a command. She looked at me. Jade, get your coat. Where are we going? I asked. You are going to show me where you live, she said. Right now. My parents tried to stop us. They blocked the hallway, talking over each other, desperate and sweaty. Mother, you can't go to that part of town at night, Dad said, wiping his forehead. It's dangerous. Let's just sit down and have dessert. We can discuss finances in the morning. It's not safe, Margaret, Mom added, grabbing Grandma's arm. Jade lives in a transitional area. It's filthy. You'll catch something. Grandma pulled her arm away. She looked at my mother with pure disgust. If it's safe enough for my granddaughter to live there for years, it is safe enough for me to visit for 1 hour. Move. They moved. We got into Grandma's car. It was a sleek, black luxury sedan with a driver. I sat in the back seat next to her. My parents scrambled into their own car and followed us. They weren't going to let us be alone if they could help it. The drive took 40 minutes. We left the gated community with the manicured lawns and bright Christmas lights. We drove onto the highway, then took the exit that everyone avoided. The scenery changed. The clean sidewalks disappeared. We passed abandoned warehouses, liquor stores with bars on the windows, and piles of trash on the curbs. Grandma looked out the window. She didn't say a word, but I saw her hand trembling on her lap. Turn here, I told the driver. He pulled up to my building. It looked even worse at night. The front door was propped open with a brick because the lock was broken. There was graffiti on the brick walls. A group of men stood on the corner, watching the expensive car with suspicion. This is it, I said softly. I felt ashamed. I didn't want her to see this. I wanted her to be proud of me, not pity me. Grandma nodded. Lead the way. We walked inside. The hallway smelled of old cigarettes and damp carpet. The elevator was out of order as usual. We have to walk up, I said. 4th floor. My parents came rushing in behind us out of breath. Mother, please, my dad begged. This is ridiculous. Look at this place. Jade, how could you bring her here? You put me here, I snapped back. It was the first time I had ever yelled at my father. He looked shocked. We climbed the stairs. Grandma moved slowly, gripping the railing. I worried she might fall, but she was determined. When we reached my door, Unit 4 billion, I fumbled with my keys. The lock was sticky. Finally, the door creaked open. I turned on the light. It flickered before buzzing on. The apartment was freezing. I had left the window cracked because of the smell of mold, and the winter air had filled the room. Grandma stepped inside. She saw the mattress on the floor in the corner. She saw the plastic bucket in the middle of the room catching murky water dripping from the ceiling. She saw the hot plate I used to cook noodles. She saw the tape holding the glass together on the window pane. It was a cell. It wasn't a home. Grandma stood in the center of the room. She was wearing a cashmere coat and diamonds, standing on a floor with peeling linoleum. The contrast was heartbreaking. She walked over to my little shelf. She picked up a photo of me and my parents from my high school graduation. It was one of the only things I had kept. "I sent the money 3 years ago," Grandma whispered. Her voice broke. She turned to face my parents, who were standing in the doorway, looking down at their shoes. "I sent you $400,000, Grandma said. "I told you to buy Jade a starter home. I told you to set up a trust for her expenses so she could focus on college or art. I specifically said, make sure she is safe." She pointed her cane at the bucket of dirty water. "Is this safe?" she asked. My father tried to speak. We were managing the money for her. We invested it. We wanted it to grow. We didn't want to spoil her." "Spoil her?" Grandma walked over to the fridge, a tiny mini fridge. She opened it. It was empty except for a carton of milk and a half-eaten sandwich. "She is starving," Grandma said. Tears were streaming down her face now. "My granddaughter is living in squalor. She is freezing. She is hungry." She walked up to my father. She was short, but she looked down on him. "I gave you everything," she said. "I bought you your house. I paid for your cars. I funded your vacations. And you couldn't spare a penny for your own child. We taught her character," my mother shouted, suddenly defensive. "Look at her, she knows the value of $1 now." Grandma slapped my mother. It wasn't a hard slap, but the sound echoed in the small room. My mother gasped, holding her cheek. "You didn't teach her character," Grandma hissed. "You taught her that she is worthless. You watched her suffer and you did nothing. You built your comfort on her suffering." Grandma turned to me. She wiped her eyes. Her face softened completely. "Pack a bag, Jade," she said gently. "You are never sleeping here again." "But my lease," I started. "Forget the lease," she said. "You're coming with me." I packed my backpack. It only took 2 minutes. I didn't have much to take. As we walked out, leaving my parents standing in the cold, moldy room, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. For years, I had felt heavy. I carried the weight of being a disappointment. But as I walked down those stairs with Grandma holding my arm, the weight was gone. I wasn't the disappointment. They were. I slept at Grandma's hotel that night. It was the best sleep of my life. The sheets were soft, the room was warm, and for the first time in years, I wasn't worried about the ceiling falling on me. But the next morning, the atmosphere changed. Grandma wasn't crying anymore. She was in business mode. She was wearing a sharp gray suit. She looked like the CEO she used to be. "Eat your breakfast, Jade," she said, pointing to a plate of eggs and fruit. "We have an appointment at 9 a.m. "With who?" I asked. "My attorney. Jonathan Hale." I knew that name. Jonathan Hale was one of the most expensive, aggressive estate lawyers in the state. He didn't handle parking tickets. He handled wars. We arrived at his office in a glass skyscraper downtown. The receptionist ushered us right in. Jonathan Hale was a tall man with silver hair and glasses. He shook my hand firmly. "I am so sorry for what you have been through, Miss Carter," he said. He sounded sincere. "Your grandmother has filled me in." We sat at a long mahogany table. A few minutes later, the door opened. My parents walked in. They looked terrible. My father had bags under his eyes. My mother's hair was messy. They looked like they hadn't slept. When they saw me, my mother shot me a glare of pure hatred, but she quickly hid it when she saw the lawyer. "Jonathan," my dad said, putting on a fake, friendly voice. "Good to see you. I'm sure we can clear up this misunderstanding quickly. My mother is just being a bit dramatic." "Sit down, Robert," Jonathan said coldly. He didn't stand up to greet them. My parents sat on the opposite side of the table. It felt like a trial. "Let's look at the facts," Jonathan said. He opened a thick file folder. 3 years ago, Margaret Carter transferred $400,000 to a joint account held by Robert and Linda Carter. The memo on the transfer clearly stated, "Jade's Housing Trust." He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a bank record. I saw the number. $400,000. I felt sick. $400,000. I could have bought a house. I could have gone to college without loans. I could have eaten fresh food. I could have fixed my car. "We have that money," my father lied. "It's in a high-yield savings account. We were waiting for Jade to be mature enough to handle it." Jonathan didn't blink. He pulled out another paper. "No, Robert, you don't have it." Jonathan adjusted his glasses. "I had my forensic accountant run a trace on the funds this morning." The money stayed in the joint account for exactly 3 days. On January 12th, Jonathan read, a wire transfer of $385,000 was made to Bluewater Realty. My mother let out a small whimper. Bluewater Realty, Jonathan continued, is the agency that sold you your lake house on Lake Erie. The room spun. The lake house, I knew that place. My parents had bought it 3 years ago. They told me it was an investment. They told me they had saved for 20 years to buy it. They spent every summer weekend there. They threw parties there. They posted photos of it on Facebook, photos of them drinking champagne on the deck, photos of the sunset over the water. They never invited me, not once. When I asked if I could come up for a weekend to get away from the city heat, they told me no. It's not ready for guests, they said, or we need alone time. They were partying in my house. You stole it, I whispered. We didn't steal it, my father shouted, slamming his hand on the table. We are a family. What belongs to the family belongs to everyone. We bought an asset that will appreciate in value for Jade one day. You put the deed in your own names, Jonathan said calm. Jade is not on the title. If you died tomorrow, the house would go to your creditors, not her. You didn't buy an asset for her. You bought a vacation home for yourselves using her inheritance. We needed a place to relax, my mother yelled. Do you know how much stress we are under? We deserve nice things too. Jade is young. She can handle a rough apartment. It builds character. We are in our 50s. We need comfort. I stared at her. You let me freeze, I said. Mom, I didn't have heat last winter. I slept in my coat. You knew that. You came to the lake house and turned on the fireplace while I was freezing. You're being dramatic, she spat at me. Grandma stood up. She looked at Jonathan. Show them the rest, she said. Jonathan nodded. He reached into the folder and pulled out a stack of photos and receipts. He spread them out on the table like a deck of cards. It wasn't just the house, Jonathan said. He pointed to a receipt. May 4th. $12,000. Custom Italian marble countertops for the lake house kitchen. He pointed to another. June 15th. $8,000. A new jet ski. July 2nd. $5,000. A private catered party for the 4th of July. I looked at the receipts. I saw the dates. On June 15th, the day they bought the jet ski, I had called them crying because I had a tooth infection and couldn't afford the dentist. I needed $200 for antibiotics and an extraction. They told me they were tight on cash, and I should rinse with salt water. I lost the tooth. On July 2nd, the day they spent $5,000 on a party, I was sitting in my dark apartment eating peanut butter from a spoon because I had run out of money for groceries until payday. Every receipt was a slap in the face. Every dollar they spent was a moment I had suffered. This is embezzlement, Jonathan said. Plain and simple, you took funds entrusted to you for a beneficiary and used them for personal gain. We are her parents, my father roared. His face was purple. You can't embezzle from your own daughter. We possess rights. We raised her. We fed her for 18 years. She owes us. She owes you nothing, Grandma yelled back. Her voice was like steel. You brought her into this world. That was your choice. You are responsible for her. She is not an investment bank for your midlife crisis. My father stood up, looming over the table. I will not sit here and be lectured. We did what was best for the family image. People expect the Carters to have a certain lifestyle. We couldn't let everyone know we were struggling. We saved the family name. No, Grandma said quietly. You sacrificed my granddaughter to save your ego. She looked at the receipts on the table. Look at this, Robert. Look at the greed. A boat, a wine cellar, heated floors. She looked at me. Jade, show them your hands. I hesitated. Show them, she insisted. I put my hands on the table. They were rough. My knuckles were swollen and red from moving heavy boxes in the cold. My nails were broken. I had a scar on my thumb from a box cutter. They were the hands of a laborer. Look at her hands, Grandma said. Now look at yours, Linda. My mother instinctively hid her hands. Her hands were perfectly manicured. Her nails were painted a soft pink. She wore 3 gold rings. You have soft hands because she has rough ones, Grandma said. You stole her youth, you stole her safety, and you are going to pay for it. You can't do anything, my father sneered. The money is spent, it's gone. What are you going to do, sue us? It will take years, we'll drag it out. We'll tell everyone Jade is a drug addict who blew the money herself. Who will they believe? 2 respected members of the community, or a girl who works at a grocery store? He was smiling. A cruel, arrogant smile. He thought he had won. He thought he was untouchable because he was my father. I felt a cold shiver go down my spine. He was willing to destroy my reputation just to keep his boat. Jonathan Hale cleared his throat. He didn't look worried, he looked bored. Actually, Robert, Jonathan said, we don't need to sue you for the money. He opened a drawer and pulled out a new document. It was bound in blue paper. Margaret signed a new estate plan this morning at 8:30 a.m. My parents' faces dropped. The arrogance vanished. What? My mother whispered. Previously, Jonathan explained, you two were the sole beneficiaries of Margaret's estate. When she passed, you were set to inherit approximately $50 million, plus her real estate holdings. My father licked his lips. Yes, that is the arrangement. Not anymore, Jonathan said. He slid the document across the table. As of this morning, Jade Carter is the primary beneficiary. She inherits the estate. She inherits the holdings. She inherits the trust. And you, Jonathan looked at my parents over the rim of his glasses. You get nothing, you are disinherited completely. You can't do that, my father screamed. I am your son. And she is my granddaughter, Grandma said. You broke the trust, you are out. However, Jonathan said, raising a finger. Margaret is generous. She is willing to offer you a deal to avoid jail time for fraud. Jail, my mother squeaked. Yes, fraud, theft, elder abuse. We have a strong case, Jonathan said. But we will drop the criminal charges if you do one thing. He slid one final paper across the table. It was a property transfer deed. You will sign over the lake house to Jade. Today, right now. My father looked at the paper. Then he looked at me, his eyes were full of hate. You want my house? He spat at me. It's not your house, I said. My voice was steady. I stood up. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I saw him for what he was, a thief. It was bought with my money, I said. It's my house, sign it. The room was silent. My father picked up the pen. His hand was shaking. He looked at Grandma, hoping for mercy. She stared back, stone cold. He signed. He threw the pen across the room and stormed out. My mother followed him, sobbing. I looked at the paper. The lake house was mine. But I didn't feel happy. I felt exhausted. I realized that my family was dead to me. They had chosen money over me every single time. Grandma reached out and took my hand. Her skin was warm. It's over, Jade, she said softly. Let them run. We have work to do. I squeezed her hand back. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me yet, she said. Now you have to learn how to own your life, and that is the hardest part. The door slammed shut behind my parents. The sound echoed in the large conference room. Then there was silence. For a long time, nobody moved. I stared at the heavy wooden door. I kept expecting them to burst back in. I expected my father to start yelling again or my mother to start crying and begging. But they didn't. They were gone. I looked down at the paper on the table. The ink on my father's signature was still wet. The lake house. It was legally mine now. But I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like I had just survived a car crash. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I sat down in the leather chair because my legs felt too weak to hold me up. Breathe, Jade, Grandma said. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Her hand was warm and dry. Just breathe. I took a deep breath. They hate me, I whispered. My own parents hate me. They don't hate you, Grandma said firmly. They hate themselves, and they hate that they got caught. There is a difference. Jonathan Hale, the lawyer, cleared his throat. He was stacking the papers into neat piles. He looked calm, like this was just another Tuesday for him. For him, it was paperwork. For me, it was the end of my life as I knew it. Miss Carter, Jonathan said, looking at me. I know this is emotional, but we need to discuss the logistics. The transfer of the property is effective immediately. However, we have a timeline. A timeline? I asked. Yes, he said. Your parents have personal belongings in the lake house. We cannot simply lock them out today without giving them a chance to collect their things. That would give them legal grounds to sue us for conversion of property. We need to be smarter than them. He pulled out a calendar. We will give them 7 days, Jonathan said. 7 days to vacate the premises. They must remove all personal effects. They are not allowed to remove appliances, fixtures, or furniture, as those were purchased with the trust funds and are now considered part of the asset recovery. I will have a security team present to ensure they don't strip the copper wiring or smash the windows. Security team, I asked. Is that necessary? With people like this? Jonathan nodded. Absolutely. When narcissists lose control, they tend to break things. We won't let them break your house. Then Jonathan opened the second folder, the thick one, the estate plan. Now, he said, let's talk about the future. The lake house is just the beginning. He opened the file. It was full of spreadsheets and lists of numbers. Margaret has restructured her entire estate, Jonathan explained. Previously, your father was the executor and the beneficiary. He was set to control everything. The family foundation, the real estate portfolio, the stocks. Jonathan looked at me seriously. That is all gone for him. You are now the sole heir, but I want you to understand what that means. It's not just money, it's responsibility. He pointed to a line on the paper. This is a trust fund that activates today, he said. It is designed to replace the stolen housing fund. It contains enough to cover your living expenses, your education if you choose to go back, and the maintenance of the lake house. You will never have to work a night shift at a grocery store again unless you want to. I stared at the numbers. They were too big to understand. I don't know how to manage money, I said honestly. I've never had more than $50 in my pocket at one time. I know, Grandma said. That is why Jonathan will help you, and I will teach you. We aren't just giving you cash, Jade. We are giving you freedom, but freedom is scary when you've been in a cage your whole life. I looked at Grandma. She looked tired. This fight had taken a lot out of her. She was 82 years old, and she had just cut her own son out of her life to save me. Why? I asked her. Why did you do all this? You could have just given me some money and left it alone. Grandma looked at me. Her eyes were sad. Because I made a mistake, she said. I thought if I gave your father money, he would be generous. I thought if I made his life easy, he would be a good father. I was wrong. I enabled him. I created a monster. She squeezed my hand. I can't fix him, Jade. It's too late for him, but I can fix this for you. I can make sure the cycle stops with you. You are the only honest person left in this family. I felt tears run down my face. I wasn't used to being called honest. I was used to being called lazy. I was used to being called a burden. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me, she said again. Just promise me one thing. Anything, I said. Don't become them, she said. Don't let the money make you hard. Don't let it make you cruel. Stay Jade. I promise, I said. Jonathan stood up. Okay, the paperwork is filed. The countdown starts now. You have 7 days before the house is yours. I suggest you stay at the hotel with Margaret until then. It's not safe for you to go back to your apartment. I nodded. I didn't want to go back to that moldy room anyway. As we walked out of the office, I felt different. I was wearing the same cheap coat. I had the same scuffed boots. But I felt taller. I wasn't just Jade the receptionist anymore. I wasn't Jade the failure. I was Jade Carter. And for the first time in my life, I had someone on my side. We thought the legal documents would stop them. We thought the threat of jail would keep them quiet. We were wrong. The 7 days while we waited for them to move out of the lake house were a nightmare. My parents didn't attack us with lawyers. They attacked us with noise. They attacked us with lies. It started the next morning. I woke up in the hotel room and checked my phone. I had 43 missed calls, 30 texts. They were all from my mother. Text 1, how could you do this to us? After everything we sacrificed. Text 2, you are a thief. You manipulated a senile old woman. Text 3, call me right now or I am calling the police. Text 4, you are dead to me. I felt sick. My stomach twisted into knots. I wanted to turn the phone off, but I couldn't stop reading. Then, the social media posts started. My father posted a long status on Facebook. He didn't mention the embezzlement. He didn't mention the stolen money. He wrote, please pray for our family. Our daughter Jade has been struggling with severe mental health issues and addiction. She has taken advantage of my elderly mother's confusion to cut us off. We are heartbroken. We only wanted to help her, but she has turned against us. It is a tragedy when children lose their way. The comments were flooding in. So sorry to hear this, Robert. Addiction is a terrible disease. Stay strong. I always knew something was off with her. She looked so messy last Christmas. They were destroying my reputation. They were painting me as a drug addict to cover their own crimes. They wanted to make sure that if I told the truth, nobody would believe me. Don't look at it, Grandma said. She took the phone out of my hand. Everyone believes them, I said, my voice shaking. My cousins, my aunts, our neighbors. They all think I'm a monster. Let them talk, Grandma said calmly. The truth has receipts. Lies only have noise. When the dust settles, the people who matter will know the truth. The rest don't deserve your time. But it got worse. On the 3rd day, I had to go back to my apartment to get the rest of my clothes. Grandma wanted to send movers, but I insisted on going myself. I wanted to say goodbye to that awful room. I wanted to close that door one last time. I took a taxi. I walked up the 4 flights of stairs. When I got to my door, it was already open. My heart stopped. The lock was busted. I stepped inside. The apartment had been tossed. My clothes were thrown everywhere. My mattress was slashed. The few books I owned were torn apart, and standing in the middle of the room was my father. He looked unhinged. His eyes were red. He smelled like whiskey. He was holding a black trash bag. "Dad," I whispered. He spun around. When he saw me, his face twisted into a sneer. "You," he growled, "the little princess." "What are you doing?" I asked. I stayed near the door, ready to run. "Get out of my apartment." "Your apartment?" He laughed. It was a scary, hollow sound. "You don't have anything, Jade. You are nothing. You think because you got Grandma to sign a paper, you're special. You're just an ungrateful brat." He kicked my bucket of water across the room. Dirty water splashed everywhere. "I came to get my money," he said. "I know you have it. Grandma gave you cash, didn't she?" "Where is it?" "She didn't give me cash," I said. "She paid the lawyers. Leave, Dad, please." He took a step toward me. He looked big and dangerous. I realized in that moment that he wasn't looking at his daughter. He was looking at an enemy. "You ruined my life," he shouted. "I'm going to lose the club membership. I'm going to lose the cars. Do you know how embarrassing that is? Do you know what my friends will say?" "I don't care about your friends," I yelled back. "I cared about eating. I cared about having heat. You stole from me to impress people who don't even like you." He lunged at me. I flinched, raising my hands to protect my face. But he didn't hit me. A cane came down hard on his shoulder. Whack! My father yelled and stumbled back. Grandma was standing in the doorway behind me. I hadn't heard her come up the stairs. She was out of breath, her face pale, but she was holding her heavy wooden cane like a weapon. The driver, a large man named Frank, was standing right behind her. "Get away from her," Grandma hissed. She looked like a lioness. "If you touch her, Robert, I will have you arrested tonight. I won't wait for the deal. I will put you in a cell myself." My father rubbed his shoulder. He looked at Frank, the driver, who was cracking his knuckles. He realized he was outnumbered. "You chose her over me," my father said to Grandma. He sounded like a hurt child. "I'm your son." "You ceased to be my son when you let your daughter starve," Grandma said. "Get out, now." My father glared at me one last time. "You'll regret this, Jade. You can't survive on your own. You'll come crawling back." He pushed past us and ran down the stairs. I was shaking. I leaned against the wall and slid down to the floor. I started to cry. It was too much. The violence, the hate, the fear. Grandma sat down on the dirty floor next to me. She didn't care about her expensive coat. She put her arm around me. "He can't hurt you anymore," she said. "I promise, he is a coward. Cowards only attack when they think you are weak. You aren't weak anymore." "I don't feel strong," I sobbed. "Strength isn't about not crying," Grandma said. "Strength is shaking apart and still standing your ground. You stood up to him. You told him the truth. That is strength." We left the apartment that day. We left the slashed mattress and the broken books. I didn't take anything. I realized that everything in that room was part of a life I wanted to forget. "Let's go," I said. "I'm ready." The next few weeks were a blur of legal battles and silence. My parents tried one last desperate move. They filed an emergency injunction to stop the transfer of the lake house. They claimed Grandma was mentally incompetent. They claimed I had undue influence over her. It was a weak legal move, a Hail Mary. We went to court. I had to wear a suit Grandma bought me. I felt like an imposter, but I kept my head up. The judge was a stern woman with glasses. She looked at the evidence. She looked at the receipts of the jet ski and the marble countertops. She looked at the medical report from Grandma's doctor that proved she was perfectly sane. Then she looked at my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter," the judge said, "this is one of the most egregious cases of financial abuse I have seen in my courtroom. You misappropriated funds intended for your daughter's welfare. You are lucky that Miss Carter is not pressing criminal charges. The injunction is denied. The transfer stands. Case closed." My father slumped in his chair. My mother started weeping loudly, trying to get sympathy. The judge ignored her. It was over. The lake house was mine, but the real reversal wasn't in the courtroom. It was in the silence that followed. My parents lost everything. Without Grandma's money, they couldn't afford their lifestyle. The bank foreclosed on their main house within 2 months. They had taken out second and third mortgages to pay for their parties, expecting to inherit Grandma's millions eventually. When that inheritance vanished, their house of cards collapsed. They had to move into a small rental apartment. It was ironic. It was nicer than the one I had lived in, but for them, it was a dungeon. They lost their friends. The rumors spread, not the lies they told about me, but the truth about what they did. People talk. Wealthy circles are small. Once everyone knew they had stolen from their daughter and their mother, the invitations stopped coming. I blocked their numbers, I blocked their emails, but one letter got through. About a month after the court case, I received a letter in the mail. The handwriting was my mother's. I sat on the edge of my bed in the hotel room and stared at the envelope. I almost threw it away. But curiosity got the best of me. I opened it. "Dear Jade, I am writing this because I want you to know that we forgive you." I stopped reading. I laughed out loud. It was a bitter, angry laugh. They forgave me. "We know you were manipulated by the lawyers. We know you didn't mean to hurt us. We are your parents. We love you. We are struggling right now. Dad is depressed. He can't find work. We are living in a terrible place. If you have any heart left, you will help us. We don't need the lake house back, but maybe you could help with our rent. Just for a few months. Until we get back on our feet. Please, Jade, be the bigger person. Love, Mom." There was no apology. No, "I'm sorry we let you freeze." No, "I'm sorry we stole your money." Just manipulation. Just a demand for money wrapped in fake love. They still thought I was the same Jade. They thought I was desperate for their approval. They thought if they said, "We love you," I would open my wallet. I walked over to the trash can. I didn't burn the letter. I didn't tear it into tiny pieces in a rage. That would have required too much emotion. I just dropped it in the bin. "No," I said to the empty room. "I am choosing myself now." I went downstairs to find Grandma. She was drinking tea in the lobby. "Grandma," I said. "I'm ready to go to the lake house." She smiled. "The cleaners are finished. The locks are changed. It's waiting for you." "Good," I said. "And Grandma, I need to change my phone number again." "Why?" she asked. "Because the past keeps calling," I said, "and I don't want to answer anymore." That afternoon, I went to the bank. I set up my own accounts. I met with a financial advisor. I learned about budgets, not how to budget for noodles, but how to budget for a future. I realized that power isn't just about money. Power is about access. My parents used to have access to me. They could hurt me because I let them in. I let them make me feel small. Now I was closing the gate. They were on the outside. I was on the inside. And for the first time, the inside felt safe. The drive to the lake house took 3 hours. It was a beautiful drive, winding through pine forests and past small towns. When I pulled into the driveway, I gasped. I had seen pictures on Facebook, but seeing it in person was different. It was a sprawling house made of cedar and stone, sitting right on the edge of a massive blue lake. There were huge windows that reflected the sky. There was a large deck that wrapped around the back. It was a palace, and it was mine. I parked my new car, a sensible, safe SUV that didn't break down, and walked to the front door. I put the key in the lock. It turned smoothly. No sticking, no jiggling. I stepped inside. The house was empty. My parents had taken their furniture, which was fine by me. I didn't want their bad energy in my home. The rooms were big and open. The floors were polished wood. The best part was the silence. It wasn't the scary silence of my apartment, where I was waiting for a rat to scurry or a neighbor to scream. It was a peaceful silence. It was the sound of wind in the trees and water lapping against the dock. I walked through every room. I saw the kitchen with the marble countertops they had bought with my dental money. I ran my hand over the cool stone. It was beautiful, but it made me sad. I decided right then that I would learn to cook. I would fill this kitchen with the smell of real food, not instant noodles. I would invite Grandma over for Sunday dinners. I walked into the master bedroom. It had a fireplace. I turned it on with a switch. Instant heat. I sat on the floor in front of the fire and just cried. I cried for the girl who slept in her coat. I cried for the girl who thought she was worthless. I let it all out. Then, I wiped my face and stood up. I had work to do. Over the next few months, I made the house mine. I painted the walls. My parents had painted everything beige and gray, cold, modern colors. I painted the living room a warm sage green. I painted the kitchen a soft yellow. I wanted color. I wanted life. I turned the spare bedroom into a studio. I had always loved to draw, but I never had the time or money for supplies. Now I bought easels, paints, and canvases. I set up a desk by the window overlooking the lake. The light in that room was incredible. Every morning I would wake up, make coffee, and sit in my studio. I painted the lake. I painted the trees. I painted Grandma. I didn't work a second job. I didn't stress about bills. The trust fund paid the utilities and taxes. I lived simply but comfortably. Grandma visited every weekend. One afternoon, in late autumn, we were sitting on the deck. We were wrapped in blankets, drinking hot cider. The leaves on the trees were bright orange and red. The air was crisp. "You look different," Grandma said. She was watching me. "I got a haircut," I said, touching my shoulder-length bob. "No," she said, "it's not the hair. You look settled." I looked out at the water. "I feel settled. I used to feel like I was running on a treadmill that was going too fast. I was always about to fall off. Now the treadmill has stopped." "Have you heard from them?" she asked. We didn't say their names. "No," I said. "I heard from a cousin that Dad is working at a car dealership in the next town over. Mom is working as a receptionist." I took a sip of cider. "It's funny, she's doing the exact job she used to make fun of me for doing." "Karma has a sense of humor," Grandma said dryly. "Do you miss them?" I asked. Grandma looked down at her cup. "I miss the idea of them. I miss the family I wanted to have. But I don't miss the lies, and I certainly don't miss seeing you in pain." She reached over and patted my knee. "You survived what they caused, Jade. That is strength. You took a house that was built on betrayal and you turned it into a home. I am so proud of you." I smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you." "We saved each other," she said. We sat there until the sun went down, watching the light fade over the water. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the dark. I knew the heat would stay on. I knew the roof wouldn't leak. I knew I was safe. Winter came early that year. I remember the first snowfall. I was in the kitchen making soup. I looked out the window and saw big, white flakes drifting down from the sky. They landed on the deck and the frozen ground. In my old apartment, snow meant misery. It meant drafts, wet socks, and higher electric bills I couldn't pay. But here, snow was magic. I put on my boots and my coat, a warm wool coat that Grandma had bought me. I wrapped a thick scarf around my neck. It was Grandma's scarf, soft and smelling of lavender. I walked out onto the deck. The world was completely silent. The snow absorbed all the sound. The lake was frozen over, a sheet of white ice. The pine trees were dusted with white powder. I walked down to the edge of the dock. The cold air filled my lungs, but it didn't hurt. It felt clean. I thought about my parents. I wondered if they were warm. I hoped they were. I didn't hate them anymore. Hate takes too much energy. I just felt distant from them. They were like characters in a sad movie I had watched a long time ago. They didn't have power over me. I thought about the girl I used to be. The girl who apologized for existing. The girl who made herself small so she wouldn't be a target. I wished I could go back and hug her. I wished I could tell her, "Hold on. It gets better. You aren't crazy. You are just surrounded by people who are broken." I looked at the house behind me. The lights were on in the living room. It looked warm and inviting. It was my house. I had reclaimed it. I had taken the symbol of their greed and turned it into my sanctuary. I realized that peace didn't arrive with a loud bang. It didn't come with fireworks or a marching band. Peace arrived softly. It arrived like the snowfall on the still water. It arrived in the quiet moments, painting in my studio, drinking coffee by the window, sleeping without fear. I wrapped the scarf tighter around me. "I'm safe now," I whispered to the wind. The wind didn't answer. It just blew the snow around me, gentle and cold. I stood there for a long time, just breathing. I was 25 years old. I had a whole life ahead of me, a life that belonged to me and only me. I turned around and walked back toward the house. I stamped the snow off my boots on the mat. I opened the door and stepped into the warmth. I closed the door firmly behind me, locking out the cold, locking out the past. I was home.